believe that that striking of the individual was intentional. So we believe that that was an accident. The officer then, according to the information that we have, removed the victim from the scene in his squad car. So he took the victim from the scene of this accident to Laurel Regional Medical Center. At that point, from the information that we have, what we believe is that he instructed the elderly man who is 80 years old to get out of the vehicle. He dropped him off by a closed door near the ambulance bay. And at that point, this victim had to try to find a way to get into the hospital and to get the medical treatment that he required. In this instance, we believe that the officer disobeyed the general orders of the Prince George's County Police Department, and the officer failed to really get medical assistance to the individual who truly needed it. We know now that the victim suffered a broken leg from this incident, and our heart goes out to him. I mean, to be struck and hurt, that's one thing, because that happens, accidents happen, and at this point we don't believe it's anything other than an accident. But when it's an officer who's involved, there are certain expectations that society has, there's certain expectations that the department has, and there are certain expectations prescribed by law that the officer must render aid. And in this case, we believe that the officer failed to do so, that he caused an injury, that he did not act as we believe an officer should act in these circumstances. And we presented this information to a grand jury, and the grand jury agreed that he should be indicted for misconduct in office. This decision was not taken lightly. This was a serious, unfortunate situation that occurred, but we must hold our officers to high standards. And the basic standard is to protect and preserve human life. And when you cause an accident, anyone causes an accident, they have a duty to that other human being. But as an officer, you have an even greater duty to ensure that the person does get aid, and that you stay on scene, and that you report such incidents to the department. There is video evidence of what occurred, so we are pretty confident in many of the facts of this case, and we look forward to pursuing justice for our victim. And if there are any questions that you have, we can answer them at this time. I also want to thank Joel Patterson, who is the chief of the Public Integrity Unit, for his work on this case and his presentation to the grand jury. And with that, we'll open it up for questions. So Shaka, do you want to come on and direct the questions? Thank you.
Before you ask your question, thank you, State's Attorney Braveboy. Before you ask your question, can you please announce who you are and what media outlet you're with? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Omari Daniels. I'm with the Washington Post. I just have a quick question. Do you all happen to know what the circumstances were that led to the officer striking the man? Was he crossing the street? You mentioned this was an accident. I'm just curious, what were the circumstances that led to this happening? If you're able to speak to that.
Joel?
I can address that briefly. From what we know at this point, our victim was walking through a parking lot.
Thank you, Omari. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you.
Harold Fisher, WHUR.
Yes.
Thank you, County State's Attorney, for this press conference. I guess I have another question for Joel. walking through a parking lot. Can you be more specific? Was it day? Was it night? Where was the parking lot?
It was the early morning hours of a parking lot of a Bowie Fire Department. The individual was cutting through on his way to someplace else. The officer was driving through that parking lot. And we don't want to get into too many more specifics just because this is a matter that is still pending litigation.
Was he walking? Was he on a bike? Can you tell
The
us?
individual who was struck by the officer's cruiser was walking. He was on foot.
And what is the status of this officer at the moment, if you have that information with the department?
He's
and-
been currently he is on administrative duty right now.
Thank you.
Hey, y'all. How about Brad
Yes.
here?
Hello.
Yeah, so it's Brad Bell with Channel
Yes.
7. So this really sort of sounds like a really heartless act. I mean, did the guy just say, "Get out of my car now"? I mean, was there any rendering of aid after the initial strike? It just sounds really heartless. What's your take, State's Attorney?
Well, what I will say is that, his initial actions, well, first of all, we believe that the general orders would have required him to make contact with the department to inform his supervisor of what had occurred. The most prudent thing, unless certainly circumstances might suggest something else is the best course of action would be to stay on scene, to call an ambulance and have the ambulance pick the person up. In this case, he actually drove the person to Laurel Regional Medical Center, which that seems to show some level of compassion and understanding that the person needed aid. But to leave that person at a locked door at the side of a facility where there was no one else there to assist him, and he clearly was injured. He had a broken leg. He's 80 years old. I think that it certainly did not meet the standards that the department has, or really society has, of any officer or any person. So it is disappointing, at least from what the information that we have now. It is very disappointing what we saw.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? If there are no additional questions, I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you, ASA Patterson. Thank you to all the attendees, and thank you, State's Attorney Braveboy. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.